I went to Spain a few months ago, and I had the best foie gras of my life, the best culinary experience of my life. Because what I saw, I'm convinced, is the future of cooking. Ridiculous, right? I mean, foie gras and future of cooking. There's not a food today that's more maligned than foie gras, right? I mean, it's crucified. It was outlawed in Chicago for a little while. It's pending here in California and just recently in New York. It's like, if you're a chef and you put it on your menu, you risk being attacked. Really, it happened here in San Francisco to a famous chef. And I'm not saying that there's not a rationale for being opposed to foie gras. The reasons usually just whittle down to the gavage, which is the force feeding. Basically, you take a goose or a duck and you force feed a ton of grain down its throat. More grain in a couple of weeks than it would ever get in a lifetime. Its liver expands by 8 times. Suffice to say, it's not the prettiest picture of sustainable farming. The problem for us chefs is that it's so freaking delicious. I mean, I love the stuff. It is fatty, it's sweet, it's silky, it's unctuous. It makes everything else you put it with taste incredible. Can we produce a menu that's delicious without foie gras? Yeah, sure. You can also bike the Tour de France without steroids, right? Yeah. Not a lot of people are doing it, and for good reason. So a couple months ago, a friend of mine sent me this link to this guy, Eduardo de Souza. Eduardo's doing what he calls natural foie gras. Natural foie gras. What's natural about foie gras? To take advantage of when the temperature drops in the fall, geese and ducks gorge on food to prepare for the harsh realities of winter, right? And the rest of the year, they're free to roam around Eduardo's land and eat what they want. So no gavage, no force feeding, no factory-like conditions, no cruelty. And it's shockingly not a new idea. His great-granddad started Pateria de Souza in 1812. And they've been doing it quietly ever since. That is, until last year, when Eduardo won the coup de coeur, the coveted French gastronomic prize. It's like the Olympics of food products. He placed first for his foie gras. Big, big problem. As he said to me, that really pissed the French off. Said it sort of gleefully. It was all over the papers. I read about it. It was in Le Monde. Spanish chef accused, and the French accused him, Spanish chef accused of cheating. They accused him of paying off the judges. They implicated actually the Spanish government, amazingly. Huh? Amazing. Huge scandal for a few weeks. Couldn't find a shred of evidence. You look at the guy, he doesn't look like a guy who's paying off French judges for his foie gras. So it died down, and then very soon afterwards, new controversy. He shouldn't win because it's not foie gras. It's not foie gras because it's not gavage. There's no force feeding. So by definition, he's lying and should be disqualified. As funny as it sounds, articulating now and reading about it, actually, if we had talked about it before this controversy, I would have said that's kind of true. You know, foie gras, by definition, force feeding, it's gavage, and that's what you get when you want foie gras. That is, until I went to Eduardo's farm in Extremadura, 50 miles north of Sevilla, right on the Portugal border. I saw firsthand a system that is incredibly complex, and then at the same time, everything beautiful in nature is utterly simple. And he said to me, really from the first moment, my MO, my life's work is to give the geese what they want. He repeated that about 50 times in the 2 days I was with him. I'm just here to give the geese what they want. Actually, when I showed up, he was lying down with the geese with his cell phone, taking pictures of them, like his children, in the grass. Amazing. He's really just in love with his geese. He's at one with it. He's the goose whisperer. And when I was speaking to him, you know, I thought, like I'm speaking to you now, right? But after, sort of in the middle of my questions, my excited questions, because the more I got to know him and his system, the more excited this whole idea became, he kept going like this to me. And I thought, okay, you know, excited Jew from New York, right? I'm talking a little too aggressively, whatever. So, you know, I slowed down. And finally, just like, by the end of the day, I was like, Eduardo, you know, like this. But he was still going like this. And I figured it out. And I was speaking too loudly. So I hushed my voice. I kind of like asked these questions and chatted with him through a translator in kind of half whisper. And he stopped doing this, and amazingly, the geese who were on the other side of the paddock when I was around, get the hell away from this kid, when I lowered my voice, they all came right up to us. Right up to us, like right up to here, right along the fence line. And the fence line was amazing in and of itself. The fence, like this conception of fence that we have, it's totally backward with him. The electricity on this fiberglass fence is only on the outside. He rewired it. He invented it. I've never seen it. Have you? You fence in animals. You electrify the inside. He doesn't. He electrifies only the outside. Why? Because he said to me that he felt like the geese, and he proved this actually, not just a conceit. He proved this, that the geese felt manipulated when they were imprisoned in their little paddock. Even though they were imprisoned in this Garden of Eden with figs and olives and everything else, he felt like they felt manipulated. So he got rid of the electricity, got rid of the current on the inside, and kept it on the outside so to protect them against coyotes and other predators. And what happened? They ate, and he showed me on a chart how they ate about 20% more feed to feed their livers. The landscape is incredible. I mean, his farm is incredible. It really is the Garden of Eden. There's figs and olives and everything else there for the taking. And it's the irony of ironies because Extremadura, the area, what does Extremadura mean? Extra hard land, right? Extra difficult, extra hard. But over 4 generations, he and his family have literally transformed this extra hard land into a tasting menu of great delights for these geese. And they are allowed to take whatever they want. Another irony, the double irony, is that on the figs and the olives, Eduardo can make more money selling those than he can the foie gras. He doesn't care. He lets them take what they want, and he says, usually, it's about 50%. They're very fair. The other 50%, he takes and he sells and he makes money on. Part of the income for his farm, a big part of his income for his farm. But he never controls it. They get what they want, they leave the rest for me, and I sell it. His biggest obstacle, really, was the marketplace, which demands these days bright yellow foie gras. That's how I've been trained. You want to look and see what good foie gras is, it's got to be bright yellow. It's the indication that it's best foie gras. Well, because he doesn't force feed, because he doesn't gavage tons of corn, his livers were pretty gray, or they were. But he found this wild plant called the lupin bush. Lupin bush, it's all around Extremadura. He let it go to seed. He took the seeds, he planted it on his 30 acres, all around. And the geese love the lupin bush, not for the bush, but for the seeds. And when they eat the seeds, their foie gras turns yellow. Radioactive yellow. Bright yellow. Of the highest quality foie gras yellow I've ever seen. So I'm listening to all this, you know, and I'm like, is this guy for real? Is he making some of this up? Is he like, you know, what? Because he seemed to have an answer for everything, and it was always nature. It was never him. It was always like, and I always like, I don't know, I always get a little like weirded out by people who deflect everything away from themselves, because really like they want you to look at themselves, right? But he deflected everything away from his ingenuity into working with his landscape. So it's like, you know, here I am like on the fence about this guy, but increasingly eating up his every word. And we're sitting there, and I hear, like from a distance, I look over, and he grabs my arm, and the translator says, and ducks us under a bush. Says, watch this. Shh. Says again, for the 500th time to me, shh, watch this. There's a squadron of geese come over. And they're loud, getting louder, 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 like really loud, right over us. And like airport traffic control, as they start to go past us, they're called back. Shh. And they're called back and back and back. And then they circle around. And his geese are calling up now to the wild geese. And the wild geese are calling down. And it's getting louder and louder. And then they circle and circle and they land. And I'm just like, no way. No way. And I look at Eduardo, who's near tears looking at this. And I say, you're telling me that your geese are calling to the wild geese to say, come for a visit? And he says, no, no, no. They come to stay. They come to stay? It's like the DNA of a goose is to fly south in the winter, right? I said that. I said, isn't that what they're put on this earth for? Fly south in the winter and north when it gets warmer? I said, no, no, no. Their DNA is to find the conditions that are conducive to life, to happiness. They find it here. They don't need anything more. They stop, they mate with his domesticated geese, and his flock continues. Think about that for a minute. That's brilliant, right? I mean, imagine, I don't know, imagine a hog farm in like North Carolina, and a wild pig comes upon a factory farm and decides to stay. So how did it taste? We finally got to taste it before I left. He took me to his neighborhood restaurant, and he served me some of his foie gras, confit foie gras. It was incredible. And the problem with saying that, of course, is that, you know, at this point, it like risks hyperbole like really easily. And I'd like to make a metaphor, but I don't have one really. You know, I was drinking this guy's Kool-Aid so much, like, he could have served me goose feathers, and I would have been like, this guy's a genius. You know? I'm really in love with him at this point. But it truly was the best foie gras of my life, so much so that I don't think I had ever really had foie gras until that moment. I had something that was called foie gras. But this was transformative, really transformative. And I say to you, I might not stick to this, but I don't think I'll ever serve foie gras on my menu again because of that taste experience with Eduardo. It was sweet, it was unctuous, had all the qualities of foie gras, but its fat had a lot of integrity and a lot of honesty, and you could taste herbs, you could taste spices. I mean, I kept saying, I said, you know, I swear to God I tasted star anise. I was sure of it, and I'm not like some super taster, you know, but I can taste things. There's 100% star anise is enough. And then I started like going down the spices, and then finally I was like, okay, salt and pepper. Thinking, you know, he salted and peppered his liver, but no. He takes the liver, when he harvests the foie gras, he sticks them in this jar, and he confits it. No salt, no pepper, no oil, no spices. I said, what? He said, we went back out for the final tour of the farm, and he showed me the wild pepper plants and the plants that he made sure exist on his farm for salinity. He doesn't need salt and pepper, and he doesn't need spices because he's got this potpourri of herbs and flavors that his geese love to gorge on. I turned to him like sort of at the end of the meal, and it's a question I'd asked several times. He kind of hadn't answered me directly, but I said at the end of the meal, you know, look, you're in Spain. Some of the greatest chefs in the world are in Ferran Adria, the preeminent chef of the world today, not that far from you. How come you don't give him this? How come no one's really heard of you? And it may be because of the wine, or maybe because of my excitement. He answered me directly, and he said, because chefs don't deserve my foie gras. And he was right. He was right. Chefs take foie gras and they make it their own. They create a dish where all the vectors point at us. With Eduardo, it's about the expression of nature. And as he said, I think fittingly, it's a gift from God, with God saying, you've done good work. Simple. I flew home. I'm on the flight with my little black book. I took, pages and pages of notes about him. I really was moved. And in the corner of one of my notes is this note that says, when asked, what do you think of conventional foie gras? What do you think of foie gras that 99.9999% of the world eats? He said, I think it's an insult to history. And I wrote, insult to history. And I'm on the plane, and I'm just tearing my hair out. It's like, why didn't I follow up on that? What the hell does that mean? Insult to history. So I did some research when I got back, and here's what I found. The history of foie gras. Jews invented foie gras. True story. True story. By accident. They were looking for an alternative to schmaltz. Gotten sick of the chicken fat. They're looking for an alternative. And they saw in the fall that there was this natural, beautiful, sweet, delicious fat from geese. And they slaughtered them and used the fat throughout the winter for cooking. The Pharaoh got wind of this. This is true. Right off the internet. The Pharaoh got... I swear to God. Pharaoh got wind of this and wanted to taste it. He tasted it, fell in love with it. He started demanding it. And he didn't want it just in the fall. He wanted it all year round. And he demanded that the Jews supply enough for everyone. And the Jews, fearing for their life, had to come up with an ingenious idea, or at least try and satisfy the Pharaoh's wishes, of course. And they invented what? Gavage. They invented gavage in a great moment of fear for their lives. And they provided the Pharaoh with gavaged liver and the good stuff they kept for themselves, supposedly anyway. I believe that one. That's the history of foie gras. And if you think about it, it's the history of industrial agriculture. It's the history of what we eat today. Most of what we eat today. Mega farms, feedlots, chemical amendments, long-distance travel, food processing, all of it, our food system. That's also an insult to history. It's an insult to the basic laws of nature and of biology. Whether we're talking about beef cattle, or we're talking about chickens, or we're talking about broccoli, or Brussels sprouts, or, in the case of this morning's New York Times, catfish, which wholesale going out of business. Whatever it is, it's a mindset that is reminiscent of General Motors. It's rooted in extraction. Take more, sell more, waste more. And for the future, it won't serve us. Jonas Salk has a great quote. He said, if all the insects disappeared, life on Earth as we know it would disappear within 50 years. If human beings disappeared, life on Earth as we know it would flourish. And he's right. We need now to adopt a new conception of agriculture. Really new. One in which we stop treating the planet as if it were some kind of like business in liquidation. And stop degrading resources under the guise of cheap food. We can start by looking to farmers like Eduardo, farmers that rely on nature for solutions, for answers, rather than imposing solutions on nature. Listening, as Janine Banyos, one of my favorite writers and thinkers about this topic, says, listening to nature's operating instructions. That's what Eduardo does, and does so brilliantly. And what he showed me, and what he can show all of us, I think, is that the great thing for chefs, the great blessing for chefs, and for people that care about food and cooking, is that the most ecological choice for food is also the most ethical choice for food, whether we're talking about Brussels sprouts or foie gras. And it's also almost always, and I haven't found an example otherwise, but almost always the most delicious choice. That's serendipitous. Thank you.